Hello everyone, and welcome back to our Portraits of Faith series. We've got a new guest today. Fiona has kindly and bravely agreed to be interviewed. So welcome, Fiona.
Thank you.
Some of us, of course, will know you quite well. Others will go to a different service. Tell us a bit of background. Have you always lived in Peterborough?
I haven't always lived here, but I was born in Peterborough. My parents lived in Warrington when I was born, and we did move to Ely for about 18 months when I was a toddler. But other than that, I was born and brought up in Peterborough, left to go to Oxford, to university. At the end of university, everyone was moving to London, so I moved to London, lived there for about 10 years. Really wanted to move back to be near my parents and grandparents, especially when my boys were born, but our life was in London. And then when my boys' father said that he was leaving me, I said, right, this is my chance to move back to Peterborough. And it was almost exactly 10 years ago that I moved back with my two little boys, and have lived here ever since. At first in Netherton, which is where I grew up, and then we've now lived here in Park Road for 2 years.
Yes, friends speak of London as the black hole. You get sucked into it and then it's very hard to get out.
Yeah.
Congratulations on making escape velocity there. Would you always have called yourself a Christian, or has that been a new development?
I was born into a Christian family. My parents were both war babies, and my mum came from a church-going family, and to her it was just a natural part of life, and that's how I was brought up. My dad's father came back from the war and said, no one would allow that to happen. There can't be a God, and so God was no part of his upbringing. But he was confirmed when I was a child. He's not ever been much of a churchgoer, but I definitely had a Christian upbringing. I kept on going to church at university, and I was also going to church when I first moved to London. But the boy's dad was an atheist, a Catholic atheist, and yeah, no, that's a thing. And it's not that I would never lose my faith. I never lost my faith, but we found other things to do on a Sunday, and the area that we lived in, our parish church, didn't quite suit me. And it was also a time when there was a lot of debates about gay priests and female bishops, and I did fall out with religion at that stage in my 20s, but certainly never lost my faith. And then when we decided to start a family, it was important to both of us that the children were brought up with a faith, which is where the being a Catholic atheist came in.
Yep.
And why I was kind of happy, because his atheism was something that he had come to through a childhood experience of Catholicism, and he wanted the boys to be brought up with a faith. And so that's when I got back into religion as well as my faith. And as the boys got a little bit older, it just became inevitable as a practicing teacher that I was going to get asked to get involved in children's ministry. And at first I thought, no, but then I won't be able to go to church. And it wasn't until I started teaching in children's ministry that I realized that is actually where I get my greatest spiritual fulfillment from, actually. Working with young people, the insights they have, the excitement they have in Jesus and in God. And I've really, therefore, found my home over the past, Finian is 17 now, so 17, 18 years. Back in Church of England, and Hugh and I have been together for 10 years now, and it's an absolutely solid core of our relationship, our faith.
So How would you say your faith has grown and developed through all that?
So from the point of view of working with children and having children, my faith has grown. The love that you have for your children is just mind-blowing. And then you stop and you think, God loves me like that as well. And the way that my kids can be annoying, frustrating, get stuff wrong. And I know how much I love them, even though sometimes I don't like them. And then you think, God loves me in that same way, which is incredible. But the other way in which my faith has developed through, as you say, all that, is when the boy's dad told me that there was nothing I could do and change, he was leaving me, it was very difficult not to feel unloved and therefore unlovable. And it, I don't know how God made it happen that I went on this silent retreat at last minute notice. And over that weekend, that silent retreat, I came to realize that actually I was lovable and that God loved me even if I wasn't lovable.
Yep.
And it was just this just incredible thing, and I have no idea if there is any connection between that and the fact that it was I think the same week or the next weekend that Hugh and I started our relationship as well. And he had been praying too and saying, you know, this we both were totally wrecked after having been on our own at the end of relationships that we had thought we had signed up to forever. So yeah, that is why it is such a solid foundation of our relationship.
Thank you. What would you say now nourishes and sustains your faith and helps it grow and stay strong?
To me, it's people, it's the church family. Being in spite of my troubles in my 20s with the idea of organised religion and having to, you know, repeatedly remind myself that I am a Christian 7 days of the week and not just on a Sunday morning, because in a busy family and full-time working lifestyle, it is sometimes easy to lose track of that. But it is the people within our community, our parish church, the other Christians that we share our lives with. That's what nourishes my faith.
There's an old parable, I guess, story of a minister in the Scottish Highlands who found that one of his parishioners, a crofter, a farmer, hadn't been coming to church for a few weeks. So he went out to see him and have a chat with him about it. And the story goes that this being Scotland, he knocked on the man's door and the man opened it and nodded to him. He nodded to the crofter. And they both came in and sat down. And the crofter poured him a dram and he sat in front of the fire. And after a minute or so of silence, the pastor leaned forward, looked him in the eye, and with the tongs drew a glowing coal from the fire and placed it on the fireplace. And it stopped glowing and got cool. And he looked at him again, put it back in the fire, finished his whiskey and left. And the point was taken. And next week he was back in church. The coal that's on its own goes out. The coal that's with the others burns hot. And all without the word being spoken in the best traditions of British pastoral ministry.
That's great. Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody on the outside looking in, so to speak? Someone who's not yet a Christian, but is curious, interested, trying to work out what they think?
I'm a university lecturer. I have 3 degrees, and so I come from an academic background, And we like to have evidence and look for answers and everything. And a lot of people who want to know about my faith want that kind of information. And my response is, I no, that's not how you have a faith. There isn't a list of evidence, proof. That's not how faith works. It's more like love. I can't tell you why I love someone, I just know that I do. And I think you've got to get away from the way our society works, is that you've got to have proof for everything. Everything has to be rationalized and logical. That's not how faith works. And actually, once you accept that and embrace that, it's such a relief and such a release to know that you can just have unevidenced, I can't think of the word, emotions. You just believe. You don't need evidence or proof. And that's really inarticulately put how I would try and get across to somebody.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Fiona, for joining me this afternoon. I hope that's been helpful and interesting. And do look in back next week when we will have another portrait of faith. But for now, go well and God be with you.